family traits. And our objectives are, we'll do a brief introduction to family traits. We'll know what family traits is all about. We're still going to talk about genetics, dominant and recessive traits. And lastly, we are going to discuss the importance of family traits. So a brief introduction to family traits. It has been known for many centuries that offspring resemble their parents. This is true of plants, animals, and human beings. If you desire to rear goats, sheep, dogs, and chickens, you would prefer to buy young ones whose parents have the qualities you desire. These young ones are likely to grow into adults unique. For instance, those who wish to raise horses buy young ones whose parents are famous for horse racing. Now, what we are talking about basically here about traits is those things that we see from the parents, those things that we inherit from our parents. Like we said, for young horses, we tend to look for their parents, the parents of these young horses who have history of winning horse races, while offspring resemble their parents and one another. No offspring is exactly like the parents or siblings. While resembling parents and one another, young ones differ from parents and one another. Two things therefore exist side by side: resemblance and difference, also called variation. Now, the word variation has to do with resemblance and difference in the terms of family traits. Now, let's talk about resemblance that occurs at two levels. The first level of resemblance is where all offspring have the qualities of the parental type of organism. Thus, goats reproduce goats, not sheep or chickens, and chickens reproduce chickens. Now, what we are saying here in essence is about resemblance, is that if we want to rear goats and the goats reproduce, goats produce their kind, because goats produce goats. And if we want to rear sheep, sheep reproduce their type, so sheep reproduce sheep. So that's the first level of resemblance, where the qualities of the parents also occurs in the young ones. And the second level of resemblance is that where the offspring have the qualities of the particular parents, such as shape, size, color of parents. Now, the second level of resemblance that we are talking about here is when the young ones or the offspring tends to have a particular quality, such as the shape or the size or even the color of their parents. In human beings, the particular characteristics that run in the family line is called family traits. Now, what we are talking about here is, in human beings, the particular characteristics such as the shape, the size, the color, the height, and the like that we inherit from our parents. All these qualities, such as shape, size, color, height, and the like, those are the characteristics, or those are the traits that we inherit from our parents, from our family line. Let's take, for instance, our grandpa. Our grandpa has a light skin, and our father, or our dad is dark, for instance. So by the time our father meets our mother, also with a dark skin, and they have an offspring that is light in complexion. It is not out of place for this offspring to have the skin color of the grandpa. Why? Because this complexion that we are talking about, it's a particular characteristic still in the family line of which the offspring inherits. Family traits. If you see a group of children playing in an open field in the neighborhood where you live, you might be able to identify some of the children as the children of Mr. X or Mr. Y or Mr. Z. What we are saying here in essence is that there are some children who tends to look more like their parents, even if you see them playing in the neighborhood or playing in a place. You can be able to identify that this child belongs to Mr. X. This girl belongs to Mr. Y. Why? Because of the traits, the resemblance. It could either be the shape of face, either the shape of the eyes, either the color of the skin, either the size of that child. Those are the kind of traits that can make someone to know the children, while even amongst other children. You are unconsciously using the similarities between the physical features of the children and their parents to match the children with their respective parents. The features you use to recognize the parents of each child is called family traits. Remember I said that there are some children that we see the similarities of which they have with their parents. It could be that the shape of the child, the shape of the head, or the forehead. It could be shape of the nose, be the height, either the person is tall or short, either the person is tall. That the person is tall or short. All these following traits, all these physical traits that we have seen in the children, will make us to recognize the parents of whose children they are. Family traits are transmittable characters which are passed from parents to offspring, from one generation to another. Now what we are talking about here is that the family traits, they are transmittable. They can be transmitted from one generation, or can be transmitted from one parent to the offspring, from one generation to another. Family traits include 1. Shape of face, forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Now we can see the shape of this child, shape of her face, the shape of her forehead, see the eyes, see the shape of the nose, see the shape of the mouth, even the ears. All these are family traits. This child must have gotten this trait from either the father or the mother. 2. Color of skin, hair, and eyes. Now these children on the screen that we are looking at, they are actually twins. For one, the skin color of this is skin color is actually dark in complexion. Color of skin, hair, and eyes are also family traits. 3. Size of mouth, head, ears, eyes, and nose. Now we could see the noses of all these individuals. They are all different. Why? Because they are from different parents. Now we can see the shape of their mouth too are also different. Their ears, their eyes, and their nose. These are all family traits. Number 4, height of body. You see this man is quite tall. This man is quite short. It could be from the family trait where probably the mother is tall or the father is tall. Now it's most likely that either of the child will get the trait of the father and the other one will get the shape or the height of the mother. Walking, method of walking, and so on. Now there are some people, even by the way they walk, we can be able to identify that this is the child of so, or this is the child of Mrs. So. So all these are all family traits that can be inherited from our parents. Another one is quantity of hair, eyebrow, and eyelashes. All these traits, even to the eye, there are also some family traits too that can be transmitted. There are some children who have bulgy eyes. So all these particular things are traits that are being gotten from the family line. Now let's talk about genetics. While it has been known for many generations that offspring inherit characters from their parents, the process by this inheritance takes place remained poorly understood until recently. In the middle of the 19th century, a man called Gregor Mendel carried out the first well-known study of inheritance of traits. The scientific study of heredity and variation is known as genetics. Now this is a simple definition of what genetics are. Said is the scientific study of heredity and variation. What do we now mean by heredity? Heredity are those things heredity is the total. You need to know what heredity is. Heredity is the biological process whereby genetic factors are transmitted from one generation to the next. Now let's quickly put the definition to what variation is. Variation is an organism that has characteristics resulting chromosomal chromosomal Basically, what we are talking about here about heredity and variation is heredity is the biological process whereby genetic factors are inherited or are transmitted from one generation to the next. I'm sure you're familiar with the word heredity, or you can even say inherit. You can use the word inherit so as to replace heredity. And this variation is an organism that has characteristics resulting from chromosomal alteration. There are some chromosomes that are found in our body that are being transmitted from one generation to another. Gregor Mendel was a monk, and he carried out the experiment in the garden of the monastery where he lived. Now, this is the scientist. Gregor Mendel was a monk, so he was the one who carried out this particular genetic experiment. He used the garden pea plant from the garden for his experiments. The garden pea does not grow well in all parts of Nigeria, but it grows in Plateau State and surrounding states. So Gregor Mendel actually there's this garden pea that he used for this particular experiment where he used to prove what genetics or inherited characters is. Gregor Mendel has noticed that the garden pea plant has 7 peas of contrasting characteristics in the table below. Now, the characteristics that Gregor Mendel noticed in his experiment is he discovered some characteristics. The first characteristic he discovered was the height of plants. After he undergone the experiment, he discovered that the characteristics of that height of stem was either tall or short. Then for the seed coat color, he discovered that some are yellow or green. For the cotyledon color, he discovered that some are green while some are yellow. He discovered the position of flower, the axial leaf. He noticed that some were terminal and axial in the leaf. Then for the seed shape, he discovered for the garden pea plant that some are round or wrinkled. Then for the color of the flower, some are purple or white. And he also discovered that the pod, some are either constricted or smooth. That is to say, some are either squeezed, while some are smooth. Then Gregor Mendel uses the garden pea plant for his experiments because of the advantages the plant had. Now, the reason why Gregor Mendel did not choose any other plant for his experiment was that's what we are going to look at now. These advantages are as follows. Discover that the garden pea plant had some advantages, and they are as follows. 1. The growth period is short, so the experiments can be repeated several times within a short period. For him to use the garden pea plant, one of the things he discovered that made him to use the garden pea plant is that the growth of the pea plant, what is being what we discover is that the growth period of these pea plants is usually short. It doesn't take a very long time to grow. So this garden pea plants can be repeated as much times as possible. So because of the short lifespan, or for the way it grows fast, we use the garden pea plant so that it can repeat this experiment over and over again. 2, the plant is normally self-pollinated. So if you wish to do the pollination by yourself, you will be sure of the types you have crossed. Pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma of the plant. So, the reason why recommended use the garden pea plant is because it is self-pollinated. It doesn't require a butterfly to pollinate it. So it pollinates itself for itself. That is to say, it transfers the pollen to from the anther to the stigma of that same plant. So it is self-pollinated. It does its own pollination by itself. 3, the plant occurred in large quantities so that it could use a large number of plants for each experiment. So after he carried out the experiment, one of the things that he noticed is that the plant brought out enough of quantities, lots of quantities of the garden pea plant. So that he could use a large number for the experiment. So for him to continue using the garden pea plant, discover that the plant has a lot of quantities. That's enough of the pea plant for another round of experiment to be carried out. 4, he could easily observe change and keep accurate record. So after when using the garden pea plant, one of the advantages you got in the garden pea plant is that it could easily observe the change. That is to say, the changes were very visible. So, and for it to be visible, it makes it very easy to keep accurate records. Why? Because what he observed, or the observations he made, were very visible. Now let's talk about dominant and recessive traits. Gregor Mendel observed that the characteristic overshadowed that of shortness when the parental tall plants were crossed with parental short plants. Mendel observed that the characteristic overshadowed that of shortness when the parental tall plants were crossed with parental short plants. When one characteristic overshadows another in the offspring, the one characteristic that is observed is said to be dominant. Now what Gregor Mendel observed, that the trait for shortness when the parent is tall when one characteristic overshadows another in the offspring, the one characteristic that is observed said to be dominant. Now let's take for instance, let's use T to represent tall. Let's use small letter T to represent short. Now, assuming this is the parent, now let's take this example for instance. We have a tall parent, then we have short male, short female. Now let's do a crossing. Let's have the offspring. This is the offspring. We now have another offspring. This is here. And lastly, you can discover here that the dominant traits that is found, these are the offspring. The dominant trait that are found in the offspring is tallness. Why? Because though the female is short, the male trait overshadowed that of the female, making the offspring to be tall. Now, all the offspring discovered that the offspring are tall. So now, for this particular crossing, you can discover that the dominant gene here is tallness. Why? Because it overshadows that of the female. So you can say the tallness is dominant. While the one that is suppressed is called the recessive. This one, though the trait is there, but this is the trait for shortness, it is still there, but it's recessive. Why? Because it was suppressed. Now, what I'm saying here in essence is that all the offsprings are tall, which is the dominant gene, because it dominated or it overshadowed that of female. Now, for the one of shortness, it is recessive. Why? Because it was suppressed and it wasn't obvious. Characteristics, dominant and recessive traits. Now, let's talk about stem height. These are all the things that Gregor Mendel worked on. Discovered that dominant, tall, recessive, usually short. For the seed coat color, discovered that dominant color was yellow and the recessive color was green. For the cotyledon color, discovered that the dominant trait is green, while the recessive trait is yellow. For the seed shape, discovered the dominant gene, the dominant trait were round, while the recessive trait were wrinkled. The flower position, dominant one was terminal and the recessive was wrinkled. Then for the flower color, discovered that the dominant trait was purple and the recessive trait was white in the flower color. Gregor Mendel wisely used pea plants for his experiments and made his observations within a short period. Remember we said earlier that the growth period of garden pea plant is very, very short. So he used this pea plant to make his observation within a very short period of time. His results were so good and convincing that today is regarded as the father of science of genetics. Gregor Mendel referred to him as the father of genetics. Why? Because he actually gave us proof of this genetics. Today, scientists use plants, rats, rabbits, chickens, and so on for genetic experiments. To do genetic experiments with human beings is very difficult for several reasons. The reason why we don't use human beings for this genetic experiment, while it's better for us to use plants. But the reason why we don't use human beings for this genetic experiment is very difficult for several reasons. One, experimental crossing of human beings is unethical. It's not right for us to use human beings it's not right for us to use human beings to do genetic experiments. It's highly unethical. What do we mean by ethical? We mean that it doesn't conform to accepted standards. Accepted standards of social or professional behavior. So that is one of the reasons why we don't have to use human beings for genetic experience. It's really unethical. That is, it doesn't conform to accepted standards of social or professional behavior. It's totally unaccepted. Two, the life of human being is long. If, for example, you want to know what the hair color of children would be when a black-haired woman or when a black-haired man marries a light-haired woman, you would have to wait for 20 or more years after the marriage to get the results you want. Aside the fact that the genetic experience is not used on human beings. One of the things, remember I said earlier that the government used garden pea plants. Why? Because it grows within a short time. Now, if you say we want to use the genetic experiment on human beings, it will take a very, very long time, more than 20 years. Now, take for instance, we want to do an experiment, want to carry an experiment on a black-haired man and a light-haired woman. It will take us many years for us to get the kind of results that we want. Thirdly, if the pea plant have 7 pairs of contrasting characteristics, a human being will have more than that number. Remember, for the characteristics that we talked about earlier concerning the garden pea plant, there were 7 contrasting pairs that we were able to find. Now, for the human beings that we are talking about now, they have, if we try it, we discover that human beings will have so many contrasting characteristics. That is why it's very difficult for us to use human beings as, or use them for genetic experiments. Importance of family traits. Knowledge of family traits has been useful in tracing family members. Now, in the earlier part of the note, I said that, let's imagine, let's take for instance, there are some children that are playing in the garden, and we discover we could use the physical features of the children to be able to trace it down to the family members, whether the child is the son of Mr. A, Mr. B, or Mr. C. So this family trait is very useful in the tracing of our family members. I also said earlier that, imagine that our grandpa has a very light skin, and we, the children of our parents, now have a very light skin. We can trace it back to the generation where it came from. So this particular family trait is very, very useful in the tracing of family members. 2. Reducing the occurrence of hereditary diseases, e.g. sickle cell anemia. Another example of this hereditary disease would also be diabetes. Now let's take for instance that in the history of a family, because of those family traits, it reduced the occurrence of this hereditary disease. Why? Because if we say we want to go back and know how this trait of this sickle cell anemia or diabetes are being formed, we can discover that probably in the lineage or in the family line, be able to discover that in that family or in that lineage that they have these family traits or this hereditary disease such as sickle cell anemia or diabetes. And lastly, the knowledge of family traits has been useful in crime detection. This is a very, very common one that is usually used in tracing family traits. Now let's take for instance that someone shot a person. We can use this family trait to this knowledge of, or this importance of family trait, to be able to detect who killed the person. Probably the person is actually using a gun. We can take the gun for forensic checkup, and we can discover the thumbprint of that person, and we'll be able to detect it. Now, another family trait another importance of family trait concerning this crime detection is that we can be able to know the thumbprint of this person that killed the person. We can get the thumbprint to be able to know who actually killed the person. And another importance of family trait, we could use it to know the paternity of a child. Paternity of a child. What do I mean by this? For us to know the paternity of a child, okay, let's take for instance that there are two people arguing that this child does not belong to me, this child does not belong to me, and this child is not mine. So this paternity test proves, or it looks into the family trace of that child, and from there we can know if the child belongs to man A or man B, if the two of them are actually arguing for who's the father of the child. Now, these family traits can help us to know who the child belongs to. Does it belong to man A or man B? This family trait is actually very important also in the discovery of the paternity of the child. And now we've come to an end on the topic family trait.